Dynasty Nerds on Better Sports Network.
Oh, we are back. It is Dynasty Nerds. It is Better Sports Network. I am your host, Garret Price. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Price. And man, it is good to be back in the Better Sports Studios. No, it's not officially a studio. I'm at home, but it's a state of mind. I'm in the Better Sports Studio state of mind is where I'm at tonight. And we've got some awesome guests. Dennis Bennett, as always, he will be joining us in the second hour, but in the first hour, Tristan Cook. Tristan Cook has been on a few times before. Tonight, he's going to come on. We're going to talk about some players that maybe are a little bit undervalued right now. Yeah, we are in startup season. We are kind of towards the tail end of rookie draft season. There's still some, and they'll be sprinkled throughout the summer. I have a couple leagues that like to wait till July and August to do theirs, so they'll be sprinkled throughout the summer. But I would say about 50% of them, and a lot of like the hardcore Twitter leagues, they always draft early. So those have already been happening, but we are getting into that startup season. So Tristan and I are going to be talking about some guys that maybe we should just look at a little bit more, a little bit longer, because there's maybe some value to be had right there. So we're going to be doing that. He might even give us a couple college guys that maybe you could be looking at for your Devy leagues, your C2C leagues, guys that in the future we might be wanting to draft. So he's going to do that. When Dennis comes on, we are going to be sorting through some of the ADP. That's right. We're going to be looking at ADP, Dynasty Nerds ADP to be exact, from all of these mock drafts that have been happening. And we're going to look at kind of just where things are going, where things are landing. A very valuable exercise, because we need to know how players are being valued right now, because that affects trades, that affects what we do in these startups, all of that kind of stuff. Very necessary. And then, of course, like I do every single week, I will be taking your trade questions. So if you have trade questions, you have startup draft questions, things like that. That's something I know we've been doing a lot more the past few weeks. I've been getting a lot of good feedback from people. They're enjoying that. So if you want to put your trades in the chat, I'm happy to discuss those, walk through those with you, and hopefully help you get some more W's for your fantasy football team. So a few things that I want to cover before we get my boy Tristan Cook on here. And one of the first things that I really want to talk about, and I've gotten this question a few times lately, and I think it's partly because of all the drafting that's going on. But Garret, how do you handle landing spot versus talent? Because I think that's a big question, especially with these rookies, that a lot of people are wondering. Because there might be a rookie that you really liked, and you looked at his tape, you looked at the numbers, the analytics, his performances, all of these things. You're like, man, I like this player. I like this guy a lot. And then he goes to a not so desirable location, and you're like, ew, do I still want this player? Or the opposite might happen, where you have a player where you look at them and you say, I don't think that guy's very good, but gosh darn it, did he land in a great spot? And now I'm tempted by him. So here's how I like to handle these situations. When in doubt, talent over situation. When in doubt, talent over situation. Obviously, could some things be boosted or maybe slightly declined? Would that be the right word? Regressed, not made as good. I don't know. Could that happen because they're in not as good of a landing spot? Sure. But at the end of the day, we are normally going to see the best players perform better than the not best players. Like, it's not a difficult concept. The cream rises to the top. I think that's something that is an old adage that works out perfectly in your fantasy football drafts. Now, Kai says he's depressed. I don't know if my presence in the first 5 minutes of this show has depressed you. Kai, I am so sorry. I try to be a person of joy, a person that brings you hope and light. And if I cause you depression, I am very sorry, my friend. But with these players, I do believe in talent over situation, landing spot, things like that. Now, we still can't completely eliminate landing spot altogether. So here's a perfect example. Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet was a player I did like going into the process. He was my running back 5 overall, so I get it. I wasn't quite as high as some other players that might have had him as high as running back 2 or 3, but I liked the player. It wasn't like I, had a bad grade on him or anything like that. Guy says, no, they are depressed. That was maybe the word you were looking for, maybe. All right. Well, I'm glad I'm not causing you depression. And yes, maybe their value is a little bit depressed. Their numbers would be a little bit depressed. That would probably be a better word than I came up with on the spot here. Something I just probably invented. Because when Rich isn't here, somebody has to fill that role of making up words that don't exist. And so I'm the only one here. I got to do it. So when we have these players, though, Zach Charbonnet, let's go back to Zach Charbonnet. I get that the landing spot wasn't exciting. I get that going to a place where Kenneth Walker already exists and has done a fantastic job overall is not exciting. But at the end of the day, am I going to drop him a ton just based on that? No, I'm not. Am I going to drop him some? Sure, absolutely. Has he moved from my RB5 to maybe like 6 or 7? Yeah, probably has. Has a wide receiver or 2 snuck ahead that might not have snuck ahead of him before? Yeah, probably so. But I'm not writing him off. Will I still draft him in certain situations? Absolutely. Because here's the thing. I believe in talented players, and I believe talented players will figure out ways to get opportunities, and coaching staffs will figure out ways to get them opportunities. We have seen plenty of teams that have utilized 2 running back sets, and both running backs have been useful for fantasy football. Most recently, now I know this past year maybe not so much, but their first year together, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, both very useful together. We've seen guys like Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams, both very useful together. Depends on how much the team wants to run the football, but that could absolutely work. We've seen Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, and we've seen a lot of different guys, Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon in their time together in LA with the Chargers. We've seen a lot of guys be able to pull this off and pull this off successfully. Another player that I don't love the landing spot. I wish Zay Flowers would have been the one to go to the Chargers. He didn't. He went to the Baltimore Ravens. But am I going to completely discount? Am I going to completely neglect the player simply because he went to a spot that I don't like? No, I'm not going to do that. Is he still my wide receiver 2 in the class like it was pre-draft? No, I ended up dropping him one spot to wide receiver 3. But I'm not drafting him now. I'm still drafting Zay Flowers. I still like Zay Flowers. I still think that he could basically be what Marquise Brown was. And honestly, I'm not convinced that Zay Flowers isn't slightly better than Marquise Brown. He moves a little bit different. I think he's a little tougher to bring down in the open field. Like, we've seen this story play out, and it's played out pretty well. And if anything, Monken's offense will probably throw it a little bit more than we've seen with the previous OC, Greg Roman. So I'm not getting rid of these guys. Now, the opposite. Let's go to the other end of things here. When we have players that we don't really like, but they go to good situations, do we still completely, leave them down our rankings? Do we ignore them? No. But I'm still not moving ahead of guys that I like. So Quentin Johnston is a great example. I had him a little bit lower than other people. I had him right around wide receiver 6 in this class. The Chargers landing spot was a pretty dang good landing spot. Like, let's be honest. It was a pretty good landing spot. I know maybe not for this year, but overall, it's going to be a good spot. It's with Justin Herbert. The other receivers on the team are getting up there in years. I just don't love the player. So I'm still probably not going to have any shares. Maybe he moves into a range where if he falls enough, I might get him. But overall, I truly do believe that landing spot's a little bit overrated. And we've seen this in recent years where guys get amazing landing spots and still just don't produce. It happens fairly frequently. Running back just recently, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, just wasn't that good. It's never really panned out. Basically, you could say that about all these skill position players that the Chiefs have drafted in recent years, because it's always been Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. None of those guys have really produced the way that we thought they were going to produce. Cam Akers went to an awesome landing spot with the Rams, a team that was eventually Super Bowl bound. Doesn't mean he's necessarily going to produce. So that's where all of this comes out for me. And look, this might not be the same exact players for you that it is for me. I would hope that it wouldn't be the exact same, because then you're just copying my rankings, and that's fine. That's why they're there. You're more than welcome to copy them. You're more than welcome to do that. But for most of you guys, you have the time to watch a little bit of film. You have a time to read some stats and look things up. If you have the time for that, form your own opinions. Go with your gut, because there's nothing worse than banking on someone else's gut or banking on someone else's opinion on a player or on a situation or whatever it is. And then they're wrong. And you're like, I thought differently, but I just decided to go with this guy. I should have trusted myself. I should have gone with my own gut, because if you go with your gut and you're wrong, you can live with that. Like, that stinks. Dang it. But there's nothing worse when you didn't trust yourself enough and you could have had this player or not had that player and gotten somebody else just because you trusted somebody else. So I wanted to touch on that really quickly. Another question that I've gotten a decent amount lately as well is about these quarterbacks in this rookie draft. So the top three guys, not so much. It's pretty chalk. Almost every draft I've seen, it goes Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. I like Stroud more than most people, but he would still like be flirting with quarterback too. So I don't think there's much to talk about there. But the questions I've gotten have more been about Will Levis and Hendon Hooker. What are we doing with these guys? Because these are players with day 2 draft capital, but might not be starting or might not be the guy right away. How do we feel about them? All of that. Let's start with Levis. I think Will Levis is a talented player. I think we saw better things in 2021 than we saw in 2022. He is a little bit older, but I still think he could use a little bit of time to sit and develop. It looks like the Titans are rebuilding. And so I would be willing to draft Levis because I think he could be their guy. They're probably going to be still slightly too good to really get in on the good quarterbacks of the next class. I don't think that they're going to be like 2-15, but I also don't know that they're a 10-win team either. So they're probably just going to be in this awkward middle zone. So I would be in favor of drafting Will Levis, because here's the thing. Even if he just shows a little bit, the value of a quarterback that shows a little bit in Superflex leagues goes a long, long way. Last year, you were still getting multiple seconds or even a first at times for guys like Sam Darnold that were producing almost absolutely nothing. So right around the turn there, I'm looking at Will Levis. Now let's go to Hooker. I know it's not as appealing because it's a 3rd round pick versus a 2nd round pick, but day 3 capital has been pretty solid. I mean, it hasn't been that much different than round 2 capital over the past few years. When we look at a guy like Hooker, I truly believe talent-wise that he would have been a 1st round pick had he not been injured. I believe that. I've been in a few different drafts. His average range that he's going in is in the late 2nd. I've seen him fall to the 3rd a couple times, and every time if he's in the 3rd, I'm snatching him. But in the late 2nd, we're throwing dart throws anyway in the late 2nd. If you're willing to throw dart throws on random wide receivers and random running backs and random tight ends, and look, some of those guys aren't random. Some of them are very talented. But at that point, you're banking on ceiling. If you're banking on ceiling, why not go for the quarterback? Because if a quarterback hits, even just the level of mediocrity, all of a sudden you're getting 1st round picks for him. No problem. Maybe even eventually multiple first if they really do something well. But they just got to get to a starting quarterback, and there's a chance you get a 1st round pick for him. So Alex said he's not drafting Hooker. Would consider in the 3rd, but not lasting until then. Like I said, I've seen it a couple times, but you're right. More often than not, I'm seeing him in like the 2.9, 2.10 range in most of my drafts. Levis has a path to starting. Would consider in the late 1st, early 2nd. And it sounds like my man Tristan is here. So let's get Tristan Cook up. Tristan, how's it going, buddy? Oh, I can't hear you.
There we go. The mute button is your friend. It's going pretty well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Now, we're going to be talking about some undervalued players, some guys that we see at different positions that we're like, he's just not getting quite enough love. But real quickly, before we get into all of that, if I remember correctly, just recently, you got to go to the NFL draft. Is that correct?
I did. I got to go to the draft and interview the first-round prospects in the media room after they got drafted for Dynasty Nerds. So it was a lot of fun.
So tell me real quickly about that, because I've done the combine, I've done the Senior Bowl, but I've never done the NFL draft. So how was it getting to be in there and interview those guys and all that kind of stuff?
It was really cool. I mean, top 5, experience that if you ever get a chance to do it, I would strongly suggest it. It was cool to see them in a environment, a little different than the stats and the film and the football player. You get to see some people have their dreams come true, and talk to them just about that, which was a really fun experience. And you get to be there in person. There's a ton of energy, in the room, and you pick up a little bit of personality on these guys that you might not otherwise get to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you ask any questions?
I did. I think there was probably 1 or 2 prospects that I didn't get to ask to interview or ask a couple questions in their interview. But everybody else, I got to at least ask 1, if not 2. So it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. Very cool. Very cool. I know it took me when I interviewed guys at the combine, it took me like watching a couple of them first to be like, all right, I think I can do this now. It takes a little bit.
I was going down that route, and I just figured, either I'm going to get to ask them or I won't, and I may as well go for it. So
yeah,
it worked out. But yeah, it was really cool. I heard you were talking about Zay Flowers a little bit ago. He was probably the most like charismatic of any of the people that we interviewed, which was really cool. Just like a fun dude, super excited, super like humble, but yeah, it was interesting to see that part of a like personality that you probably don't see anywhere else.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. I remember walking away from the combine being like, man, DJ Dallas is such a good guy. And then also being like, man, Keyshawn Vaughn's kind of a douche. So
yeah, fair. Yeah. It's weird. Like without those like interactions, you would have no idea. And it's not to say that there aren't people, one way or another that can't have success or failure,
sure,
or lack of success in the NFL, but it's just an interesting extra piece of information, to put in the back of your mind when you're evaluating players or as their careers develop.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to be talking about certain players that we think their value might be just a little bit lower right now than it should be. Guys that we're just kind of keeping an eye on. I'm going to throw a few in there, but I want to give you the floor. I want to let you shine because I talk too much as it is. So, fair. Tristan, let's start with the quarterback position. And we know for the most part, it doesn't matter much unless it's super flex. So let's think of it in a super flex format here. Yeah. Who's a quarterback right now that you look at them and you're like, I think they're a little undervalued?
Well, it's actually interesting because of what you were just talking about with quarterbacks, specifically with Hendon Hooker. My undervalued quarterback is Jared Goff. I don't think he's, like Hall of Fame talent, first overall pick that some of the first overall picks are. But I think that he's in a position where, Hooker's not going to come in this year. That would be a very unintelligent move on Detroit's part, I think, coming off of an injury. It's not like he has a threat this year. I think the window for Goff is not necessarily massive, but he was like quarterback 10 in most scoring formats last year. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are excited about Hooker and the value in that offense. The adding Gibbs, all of the stuff that you can be excited about for a team, and are just kind of like ready to hand over the role to Hendon Hooker of, like, I agree, if he didn't get injured, he's probably a borderline first round talent. The age is a bit of a concern, but now the age and the injury, I think Jared Goff is, going to give you like low end quarterback one numbers, assuming he stays healthy the whole year, which you can say about every player. But I don't think you have to pay what you would for a quarterback in that situation. And I think he's going to have some longevity, even if it doesn't end up being in Detroit. He's not going to be a bad quarterback.
Right.
I think for his, like, he's going to have startability, and anytime you have a starting quarterback in a super flex league, they'll hold some value. So from that standpoint, I think that, like, you can trade for him if you need a second, or especially if you need like a third quarterback. If you could get Goff as your third, I'd love that. And then from there, it's just, if you're contending, you hold on to him. And if you feel like, hey, maybe there's a team who had a quarterback go down, I can sell him for a profit, halfway through the year, or even next year, you can recoup value trading him later.
Yeah. And he's been an interesting story because there have been a lot of rumors, not really as much this year, but the two previous years, that the Lions could draft a quarterback, and they've been in position record-wise to do so. And they've chosen not to, and they passed on some guys that were, pretty talented, had opportunity to do stuff, but they didn't end up taking it. And I think it's paying off for them right now, because that offense is it looked good last year, and they only added more weapons to that offense this year. So definitely no excuses for Jared Goff, but I'm with you. I actually have a surprising amount of Jared Goff shares. So I'm hoping that this is correct and he continues to be undervalued and continues to produce for my fantasy football teams. So I think that's a fantastic one. There's a couple quarterbacks that I had thought of as far as like potentially underrated guys. The one I wanted to end up going with here is Kyler Murray. And I get why people are off Kyler Murray. He's not done a lot over the past year and a half or so to make me say, like, yes, that's my fantasy franchise quarterback. Between the injuries, between the comments about potential work ethic issues and playing too many video games, and now his head coach is gone and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, he's getting paid a lot of money. Like, he's getting paid a lot of money, and he's going to be starting somewhere for somebody for a few years at least. So even if the worst case scenario happens and the Arizona Cardinals are the worst team in football and they have the first overall pick, well, then Kyler Murray is getting traded to somewhere to be the starting quarterback, because there's plenty of deficiencies on plenty of teams that could use a guy like Kyler Murray. Like, put Kyler Murray with the Atlanta Falcons right now. They look pretty darn good with Kyler Murray as their starting quarterback. Put him, there's a lot of teams that could use a guy of his caliber. And I think especially because of the contract, that insulates his risk a little bit. And I've seen him in drafts falling to the third, maybe even to the fourth round. Now, Heavy T, my producer, he said, as a Falcons fan, I want nothing to do with Murray. So I guess he doesn't like that. But from a fantasy perspective, I would love that with all those weapons there. No offense to Desmond Ridder. He's my boy and all, but I'm not sure he can sling it and run it quite like Kyler can. So I would like that personally, but we'll see. So let's go over to running back now. What running back are you looking at here and saying, you know what? Undervalued?
Yeah, so before I hop on my running back, I do agree. I almost went with Kyler, so I think it's funny that you picked him, because, and I had no idea who you were going to pick, but
yeah, we didn't talk about
agree.
It
like the value, or the view of him is going down, and the injury doesn't help, short term, but you could be getting a huge steal on it, on a player who's, like you said, he's insulated. He's going to be starting somewhere for a while. Similarly, actually, Goff was in that position and kind of is still at the tail end of the big contract. But yeah, I think that's a great one. But for my running back, it's a player that you've probably talked a lot about, more so as a time to sell before you can't get out, and that is Derrick Henry.
Okay.
I actually just saw a trade in one of my home leagues with him. I believe it was a second and a third for Derrick Henry, which I was shocked at that price. But I also kind of get it. Like, if you're a rebuilding team, he's not going to do you any kind of favor. And at that point, like, you want to get as much as you can, which is to sell like your share as fast as you can. But I don't think that he's going to be like bad until he falls off that running back cliff. Like, it will come. Time is undefeated. Even Adrian Peterson eventually,
Sure.
couldn't cut it anymore. He lasted till like 35 when he was still playing or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
he was really only
yeah.
playing to like 31.
Yeah, I mean, it was like sign halfway through a year, have like 2 games and a few touchdowns sprinkled in, and no fantasy value.
Right.
But yeah, Henry's getting up there certainly. But I don't think Tennessee's going to do anything but just run him into the ground,
Sure.
pun fully intended, I guess, since he's a running back. But I think that if you can get him for a second and a third as a contending team, you don't care about those picks. Like, the second round pick, if you miss the playoffs and it's a mid-second, you feel a little worse about it.
Sure.
But I think that, like, if a second and a third for a chance to have a guy who could be a top 5 running back for this year, he might not be valuable at all next year. He might, we might be in the same position next year also. Like, wow, he's still there. Like,
Right.
you can buy him for a third and a fourth next, like whatever it is. But I think that he's a player that, like, if I'm a contending team in a contending window, I want him on my team, and I'm just holding on to him until he's done. Like, I don't think that you're going to ever get anything back after each season as a contender that would be worth it for the upside that he would present as, a starting running back.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I am for trading for running backs that are slightly past their prime, age wise. We're talking 27, 28-year-olds, guys that in a contending window, you only have to give, some ancillary pieces, some low round picks to get these guys. And you get 1 year if you're lucky too. But I'm fine with that, because you can do that every year. Like, just keep trading your second for a solid running back that's going to help you win this year, and you're in good shape. Because the hard one that I hate trading for is running backs in their prime, because now I'm giving 2 first plus something, and when I do that, I better get 3, 4, 5 years out of this guy if I'm giving multiple first round picks, because then if he hits that window of, oh crap, he's worth nothing now I just way overpaid for a guy that I didn't get a lot of years and a lot of production, and oh shoot, there was an injury in the second year I had him, and all this stuff. So I'm good like drafting rookies or trading for the old guys. It's that in between that's really tough to do.
I agree. It's really risky. I mean, I've done it here and there, trading for like Christian McCaffrey.
Sure.
I've done it, but you always feel a little afraid, because you're like, if this doesn't work out, I not only have a player whose value dropped significantly, but I also now don't have my picks that I had to send to get. So I'm with you. Like, draft the running backs, and to what you were talking about earlier, draft quarterbacks in super flex always. Like, receivers, I'm more of the camp of hold on to them, keep them on your team. They're the ones you build around. And then if you're contending, buy some veteran, like running back production and or quarterback. And then if not, sell off those shares and try to hit on draft picks the next year.
Yeah. So the guy, if you had listened to the Dynasty Nerds podcast this week, which some of these people here do, some of these people may not have, but if you listen to this week, we did our running back buys episode. So that kind of dovetailed very nicely into this. So that made this one pretty easy for me. I'm not going to go in depth about it. but somebody that's value has dropped too much. And I think now is actually the perfect time to buy, which is funny because I didn't like this player before and I never wanted to buy him because he was way too expensive for what I expected. Derrick Henry. You just said him. Najee Harris.
Yeah. There you go.
Another big guy that went to Alabama. So no, Najee Harris, Pittsburgh Steelers. He's got 3 years left on his rookie deal. And right now you're getting this running back 13 off the board. So I'm getting a guy that at the very worst, volume wise, is going to absolutely be a running back one, because we know that he's going to be getting 300 and plus total touches. Like, he's one of the few running backs that you can feel pretty confident in 300 plus total touches. That doesn't happen for probably 25 of the 32 teams. There's only a few teams that are willing to give one running back that much. The Pittsburgh Steelers are one of them. But he's fallen so far. You still get the youth on your side. So I think right now he's one of the most underrated assets in all of fantasy football. And there's even some other assets on that team that I think are pretty underrated. But I'm sure Rich will be talking about his boy Deontay Johnson this week. So let's get to the wide receiver portion of this. Tristan, give me a receiver that you like and think is undervalued.
I almost went with Deontay Johnson. I did not. I went with another former Pittsburgh Steeler, though. Well, I guess Deontay is still a Steeler, but
Antonio Brown.
With yes, by like the Antonio Brown will always hold value, because what if? No. My former Pittsburgh receiver that I went with is Juju Smith-Schuster. I've been a big fan, like production wise. Not necessarily TikTok wise, but production wise, of Juju, for the value and like perception of him. I think that he has been like undervalued since he was overvalued. Like, there was a fall off when he was 22 and the wide receiver 3 or 7 or whatever it was with Antonio Brown, and everyone was drafting him super early, and then he kind of just fell off a cliff value wise. But I think the Patriots have a history of turning slot receivers into like insanely productive fantasy options. So I don't know if he'll I think the value on him is low enough, and his age is also young enough that I think that you have a lot of upside for, he's not going to be, 7 for 150 and, a touchdown or 2 every week. But, he could be 5 for 50 and a touchdown half of the weeks. And I think you can get him for pretty cheap. And so he was the top one. I have several buy low wide receivers. I think it's the easier position to have a bunch of them at, because there's a lot of them that, there's only so many running back touches to go around, but wide receivers tend to have a lot of opportunity comparatively. So he was the one that I went with, but I have quite a few, so I'm curious to see if who you have matches up with any of mine.
Yeah, I always like the past couple of years, I've always wanted to like Juju, and I just can't. I don't know what it is. I know that he has weeks where he's solid. I think it's the lack of burst and separation. I don't know. There's something that sticks in my craw with Juju Smith-Schuster, and I can't quite get over it. But for my buy low wide receiver, I stayed close to home this time. Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper every year, he seems like he's the new Robert Woods in a way, where every year he's drafted well below a lot of other players that he's going to inevitably outproduce. Like, it happens every year. He was a guy that I called, I think, I'm trying to remember if it was on my hot takes or when we did our top 12 receivers or what it was, but I put Amari Cooper as a wide receiver 1 last year preseason. And guess what? He was a wide receiver 1 last season. And that was with not good quarterback play overall. Now, hopefully Deshaun Watson is back and looks more like the Deshaun Watson that the Browns paid a ridiculous amount of draft capital and paid this fully guaranteed contract to be. Like, hopefully he's that guy. But I just don't see a scenario where Amari Cooper isn't a top 15 guy again. He's going to be funneled a lot of targets. I know maybe not quite as many as in the past, because we have Elijah Moore there now, and Tillman's there as well. So like there are some other players, but ultimately he's the guy, he's the X, he's the focal point of this offense. So I think he's still criminally undervalued. Basically in every rookie draft startup draft, I've not seen him go above like the mid 8th yet. He's always 8th, 9th round. And when you can get a guy that could be a potentially wide receiver 1 that late in your startup, and granted he's older, but he's 28, gonna be 29. Like you still got another good 2 to 3 years left of solid production out of him. So I'm a big Amari Cooper guy, and I think he's really good value right now. So let's get to the least exciting position. Let's go to tight end. Tristan,
Fair.
Tight end that you think is undervalued. You could pick like 8 million because there's really only 3 that are even valued. But who's undervalued?
That was kind of where I found myself was, well, there's only really a few that I like, and then there's everyone else. But somebody that I think that you can get for almost nothing is Trey McBride. I know he was like a highly ranked tight end coming into the NFL. Oh, I'm not sure I lost you there.
I think you're good.
Okay, there we go.
You went away, but you're back.
Freaked out on me, but yeah, Trey McBride is my guy. I think that the new offense that I expect to be a little different in Arizona from the Cliff Kingsbury offense is going to be a much more tight end heavy offense with 2 tight end field, probably a bit more. And Ertz is also getting up there in age. So I think Trey McBride could be pretty easy to obtain for pretty much any, like maybe you'd have to give a third. But I think that I'd like Trey McBride over most of the options you're getting in the 3rd round in this year's class. But I don't think you'd even have to spend that much. I think you get him as a throw in. You get him maybe for a 4th. But I think that he's got an opportunity. I mean, he was the top tight end I had in his class. So to get him for next to nothing, I think is a pretty criminally low value.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with somebody in the same class that I'm surprised is going as low as he is. And like I'm in a startup right now with some Nerd Herd members, and in this draft, Greg Dulcich, who had a fantastic year as a rookie and is now in a Sean Payton friendly offense, which tends to like his tight ends. He's going behind a lot of rookies. Like he just went behind Luke Musgrave. He just went behind Michael Mayer. And look, I know Michael Mayer is an exciting player, but this is a young guy that we already saw that he has something. We already saw that, maybe the only player that has a connection with Russ in this offense. I think Greg Dulcich is super, super underrated right now. And part of the reason we were talking about it in the chat and people were like, well, I didn't want to let him fall that far, but Adam Troutman, just went to the Broncos. And look, I get it. He has a connection to Sean Payton, but here's the thing. Basically every coach, every, front office guy, like they like to bring in a couple of their guys to install the schemes, install their offenses, things like that. Like, I think that's what he is. I think he's just a glue guy that has familiarity with Peyton that's going to help install the offense. I don't think there's much more to it than that, to be honest with you.
What
do you think about that?
I like that. I mean, I'm a Broncos fan, so as is my Nerds shirt color choice for the day. But I like that. I mean, Dulcich is much closer to Jimmy Graham than Troutman is. And if you're trying to make Sean Payton comparisons, Dulcich is going to be the one you would imagine getting more of the offense schemed for him. And coaches love to have 2 or 3 good tight ends on their roster. That doesn't mean that they brought in Troutman to be the starting tight end and eat into Dulcich's fantasy value. I mean, I'm sure they weren't concerned about his fantasy value, but my point is, I don't think that just because they brought him in means that they expect him to be the starter or be the flexed out, offensive weapon at tight end that Dulcich can be.
Just Josh in the comments said that we're not supposed to tell everyone about Greg Dulcich.
Never mind then. All of that, I take it back.
This didn't exist. Never mind.
UCLA legend Greg Dulcich.
All right. Well, Tristan, before we get you out of here, I did throw a little something your way when I was telling you about the show. Do you have a couple college guys? Now, this could be more Devy focused, C2C, next year's class, whatever you're thinking here. But are there a couple college guys that for those of us that like to keep a little bit of an eye that way that you might have as an undervalued guy right now, specifically somebody that maybe I could take in the 5th round of the program draft right now? That would be great too.
That would be really good. You guys are slacking behind. I think one of the conferences is through like 10 or 11 rounds, so you guys got some work to catch up on.
I'm sure I'm single-handedly responsible for that. Probably.
It's okay. Don't confirm or deny that. I can't. I won't hold it or put it on you.
All right.
But yeah. So I have a guy coming into the NFL this year that actually I'm in a draft with you that you just drafted that I was bummed about, which we talked about last time. I think it was last time, one of the times before. But that was Trey Palmer.
Mm-hmm.
I love Trey Palmer. It was right before the combine, and I wasn't sure how fast he was going to run, and then he ran 4.33, which is a very good time for somebody that's 6'1", 190, or at least that was I think the combine stats.
Sure. It was close
but yeah, so I love that as a rookie coming in that is still going super late, because it was a 6th round pick, I think, but to Tampa, but like. I think that's a late round pick that I'm trying to get in every draft that I can. As far as players in college, this guy isn't a guy that you can draft right now because he's on most C2C rosters. But for people, that are looking for players potentially in next year's class, Jacob Cowing, the wide receiver Arizona from UTEP. He transferred in last year and had a monster year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a name that comes kind of up the boards and onto the national stage a bit. He's produced at every level. He's a little slender, I think, but wide receiver we've seen kind of change where you don't have to. You can be 5'11", 170, and that's not really held against you that much.
Sure.
I'm not a very big guy, and at the draft, I was like basically the same build as Jordan Addison. He's a little bigger than me, but I was shocked at like that just looks like somebody roughly my size, and he was obviously one of the receivers in the country for the Lakers. So yeah, I think Cowing is somebody that we'll probably be talking about next year as not necessarily a top pick, but somebody that is a value pick later mid rounds of drafts.
All right. I like it. Well, Tristan, I appreciate you coming on, my man. Tell the folks where they can find you, anything that you're working on or anything that you want to plug right now, even if it is just the program, whatever you have on your heart and on your mind, go right ahead.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at the Tristan Cook because somebody still has just at Tristan Cook and hasn't tweeted in like 13 years. So one of these days that account will get removed, I hope, and maybe I'll get that one. But yeah, you can find me there. Football season's getting here close. I'm going to be diving into my post-draft rankings for all of the positions. I'll probably put out an article on Nerds just kind of highlighting the post-draft changes rankings, and I post them all on Twitter. So check it out there. Check out the program C2C on Twitter as well. The coolest format for a C2C or fantasy football league I think that exists, and you know a lot about it since you helped get it started. But yeah, if anybody doesn't know about it, check it out. It's a lot of fun.
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on, man. And we'll have you on again soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Happy to do it, and take care.
All right. We'll see you, buddy.
See ya.
All right. Before we go to commercial break, I want to remind you all about the Fantasy Alarm All Sports subscription. That's right. Get all pro access to Fantasy Alarm. Unlock all the features, including the fantasy football and betting content, plus the award-winning DFS playbook covering 10 different sports. I don't even know if I can name 10 different sports, but they cover it. For a limited time, get all this for 50% off your first 6 months with promo code ALARM50. That's ALARM50 at fantasyalarm.com. So get it started today with a free trial. That's promo code ALARM50 at fantasyalarm.com. All right, we're going to take just a few minutes of a break here, and we will be back. We're going to be answering, it's me. I'm by myself. I'm going to be answering some of your trade questions. So if you have some trade questions, feel free to put them in there. We're going to be talking a little bit more about values. That's kind of the theme of the night, all about these player values. And then around 10:15, Dennis Bennett's going to join us. We're going to be sorting through the ADP, looking for those gems, looking for those guys that let's avoid those players. We'll be back in just a moment.
What can we expect from you out there on the track tonight?
Listen, I have a wife, 2 kids. I have, full-time jobs. I'm never nervous. I don't even know what that word means. Can you explain what nervous means? No. I'm ready to have fun. I've never done anything like this before. I got asked to be a part of this. This is fascinating. Like, it's so cool to just look around and see what goes on here. So I'm just excited to get out on the horse. And you want trash talk? Is that what you're asking me for? No trash talk. I hope everyone does well.
All right. Everyone's going to do well, but it has to be a winner. So give me your trifecta. Who's going to come in first, second, and third? Your heat.
I will go Maria 1, me 2, Willie 3, Moose goes 4th.
Well, it's very simple. I won this event last year. I won my heat, and so the defending champ has to be the favorite. Now, that makes me a little nervous just because I feel like it's hard to repeat. There's a little pressure when you're the favorite, but that being said, I'm still optimistic.
So your heat, it's you,
yes,
Moose and Keith from Better Sports Network, and Willie Colon.
I think Keith might be my stiffest competition, and I asked for this because I actually recruited Keith, if you didn't know. So Keith, if you win, you're welcome.
Malusis is very good. I mean, he knows what he's doing, but I'm going to go with Maria.
Keith is waving to the crowd. He must pay attention because they're off. It's Mark Malusis going for the lead. Maria Marino on the outside, and now Keith Irizarry on the outside with speed, and they're 3 wide into the first turn. Woo! Mark Malusis is locked in for his life. 138 and 2. They're into the stretch. Sportscasters Derby 2. And still in front, Keith Irizarry. And now Mark Malusis is trying to squeeze on through.
Come on! Back! Come on! Let's go! Come on, kick it! Kick it! Yeah!
Keith Irizarry. Keith, you did it all the way, wire to wire, over Mark Malusis.
Awesome! That was so cool!
The champ is here! Keith, what was it like being out there? Adrenaline rush, you were doing the Instagram Live, so there was no panic. You looked cool, calm, collected the whole time, and you won it.
I felt really comfortable. I did. Like, I know you were joking with me before. Are you nervous? Are you whatever? What are you? David, the driver, was awesome. He's like, we're going to win this. I said, all right, let's win this. And he said, let's go. Yeah, I just felt really comfortable. I did. It was fun. We're in the lead. I got Maria Marino on the right side of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to beat us, right? And then out of nowhere, you see Moose coming up this way, and we feel him breathing down our neck. And I'm like,
Moose
no!
on the loose. Watch out.
Moose was definitely on the loose, and we just got Moose by a neck, a nose, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but again, all of this for a great cause, and it was absolutely awesome to do this. It was cool.
All right, Keith, congratulations, and no matter what, you could always hold this over Moose's head.
Yeah!
Welcome back in, folks. We are back on the Better Sports Network, Dynasty Nerds. I am your host, Garret Price. Thank you to Tristan Cook for joining us just a little bit ago, talking about some of those players that are just a little bit undervalued, guys that we might want to keep an eye out for in our drafts. As I said before, feel free to put your trades in. This is the time of the show where try to get to as many of those as I can, answer as many questions as I can during this time. So Sedata Fork says, is it just me or does it seem like Pittman is dropping in value? Yeah, I think he is. And I find it really interesting because the biggest reason is quarterback. That's the biggest reason he's falling. People are worried about Anthony Richardson or, maybe for the start of the year, maybe it'll be Gardner Minshew, but can he get him the ball? Can he get it to him regularly? All this kind of stuff, which I think are legitimate concerns. The funny part is, has he had a quarterback in his career that has consistently been able to get him the ball? So I don't know that anything has changed that much for Michael Pittman Jr. He's always had sporadic quarterback play the entire time that he's been in Indianapolis. So all of that being said, it doesn't really mean much to me. I think he should be valued pretty similarly to how he's been valued always. So yes, I do think he's dropping a little bit in value. And yes, I would absolutely swoop in and look at acquiring him if I can. Now, Kai, you said 12-team half-point PPR start 9 lineup, but I do not see the actual question. So if you want to repost the actual question, I would be happy to answer that for you as well. So a couple things. Real quick, Dan Edwards says, I remember Rich mentioning Aiden O'Connell on the draft podcast. Is he worth a waiver wire pickup? It depends on how deep your league is. Some of these leagues are, 24 spots total. If that's the type of league, no. But if you're rocking 30 plus and you got a deeper taxi squad, bench, that kind of stuff, absolutely. I definitely think he's a guy to target in your 5th round of your rookie drafts, just as an upside backup to Jimmy G. Because as much as he's their guy, it's only a 3-year deal that they can get out of decently easily and decently quickly. So you never know when he'll be injured, which has happened a decent amount over his career. He gets injured a little bit and they bring him in, and who knows, maybe he gets a spot start here or there, or maybe he could even keep a job. So I'm always for taking these late round waiver wire flyer quarterbacks just in case. It has to be a player that I think has some real opportunity just based on talent to even keep a job if they ever had the opportunity. And I think O'Connell's one of those guys that has enough juice that he could be that guy. So I absolutely would. Kai says 12-team, 1 quarterback, start 9, rebuilding. I have London, Hollywood, Deontay, and Dotson. Would you trade 106 and 107 for Olave, or stay and take whoever falls? Addison or Zay at 106, most likely. In a rebuilding, it's tough because you do want to have as many assets as you can. And I like Addison and Zay. And I think this is a very fair trade overall. But right now, you don't really, even though you're a rebuilding team, you have 4 fairly young receivers right there. I would rather get a guy at the top of my lineup that I think can help be my wide receiver 1. Will Olave truly be a true wide receiver 1 for fantasy football? Maybe. I don't know. But he definitely has a shot at it. So I would be willing to make that deal. I don't think Addison and Zay are generational enough, crazy talented enough to scare me off of getting a guy that we've already seen produce in a pretty good way in Chris Olave. So I would be willing to make that deal. It is close, but I would be willing to make that deal. Alex asks, how do you handle your rookie drafts where people know your public rankings? Do you need to be more aggressive? Shout out to my fellow nerds league mates, Eric, Andrew, and Efren. All right. Or Erfin, sorry. So That is funny. I am drafting literally a Nerd Herd league right now. So these are all people that are Nerd Herd members. They got it for if you listen to the Nerd Herd episode, we were doing like these t-shirt giveaways where if you bought a t-shirt, you were entered into a chance to win to play in a league with either Rich or myself. So I'm in the middle of the draft right now. And it has been really fascinating to draft one with people that are the hardcore nerds people because excuse me, they listen to everything you talk about. So a lot of their feelings on players and situations and their values are similar to your players and values and situation. Like they have similar, not exact, but similar feelings on a lot of stuff. So certain players that I would let fall fell. Certain players that I'm going to be more aggressive and jump up to get have gone earlier. So that's been very interesting. But as far as knowing like my exact stuff, it does make it a challenge because there have been times where it's my turn to pick and they'll say, I know who you're picking here. And they've been right. They've known exactly who I've been picking. So yeah, I have had to be a little more aggressive on trades. And that's what I did in this startup. I traded a ridiculous amount. I don't even know how many trades I've made. I should look and see if there's like an easy way to see all of the trades that I've made in this startup. But just off the top of my head, I've probably made, in the first 11 rounds, I've probably made 14 trades, like a lot of trades, multiple trades around at times. So yeah, I have had to be a little more aggressive moving up and down the board, both. Like I didn't pick in the first round, but I picked a bunch of times in rounds 3 through 7. I think I had 2 picks in almost every round except for the 6th in rounds 3 through 7. So that is something that you kind of have to be a little more aggressive, be the guy that's moving and shaking when people know who you like. Because if you sit pat, they're going to try to jump ahead of you constantly. They're going to try to get ahead of you and take the guys that you like before I take them. So that's a really good question. And it does make drafting just a teensy bit more interesting. So, all right, Ian says 12-team PPR Superflex tight end premium rebuilding team. I have decent depth at quarterback. However, I could use a solid tight end. I was thinking of offering Cousins and Pollard for Andrews. What's your opinion on that trade? I don't hate the trade. I don't think it's a terrible offer, but I don't know that I would make that deal. Here's the reason. If I'm a rebuilding team, I'm probably trying to either do one of two things. One, acquire more draft capital, or 2, draft young players. Mark Andrews is, let's see. Let me look right now. I want to say he's 28, but let me look. And now I know that tight ends can last a little bit longer than some of the other positions. So it's definitely not it's the end for him. And, he's not going to be that guy anymore. So yeah, he's 27 right now, but he turns 28 like 3 days before the season starts. So this will be his age 28 season. I would much rather go for Kyle Pitts. Now I know that he is less secure than Mark Andrews, but I need that youth. I want those young guys on my team. I'm not wanting somebody that in 3 years when, my team is a legitimate contender and I'm dominating the league, that he might be not the same guy anymore. So I would much rather get somebody a little bit younger or go for draft capital there personally. All right. Sedated Fork says, I just got a trade offer. 102 in Superflex or Garrett Wilson. Ooh, that is tough. He says his quarterbacks are Dak and Deshaun. So basically you're saying, would you rather have Anthony Richardson or would you rather have Garrett Wilson? And I don't know. I don't know. And I know that's not the answer that you want there. Man, I really got to think about this because I love Garrett Wilson. I love Garrett Wilson. I think he could end up being one of those truly elite wide receivers, especially now that he has Aaron Rodgers. But that quarterback is tough. Tough to miss. Man, I'm sick because in those super flex drafts, those quarterbacks are always so difficult to get. Right now, Anthony Richardson's ADP is actually higher than Garrett Wilson's. Believe it or not, in super flex leagues, it's higher. So we have some differing opinions here, and this just shows my struggle. Heavy T says Wilson. In this case, go with what's proven versus unproven. Just Josh says you can trade the 102 for Wilson plus. So we have a differing of opinions, and this is why I'm so torn on this, because I think this is a very fair trade. I do. And I agree with both sides of this. Do I think that the value is probably on the 102 side? I do. I think the value is probably on the 102 side. But does the thought of Anthony Richardson scare the tar out of me, especially when I know exactly what I have? I shouldn't say exactly, but I know what I have in Garrett Wilson. Yeah, it does scare me. If you had a third quarterback, I think I would be willing to do it, but I would be searching for more than just Wilson. I would be trying to get more, just like Josh said. If you don't have a third quarterback, I'm probably going with the quarterback there. Quarterbacks are so tough to get in super flex leagues. You cannot get them every day. So, that is one of the hardest trade questions I've been asked in a long time. I don't know if I like getting those that are that hard. I like the easy ones. It makes me feel smart. Okay. Dan Edwards, or actually just Josh before that says, honestly, the startup pick trades are scary. Any advice you can give? Yeah, I know some people like me, I love startup pick trades. Love startup. Oh, wait, hold on. It's a 14-team super flex league. You got to go Anthony Richardson then. You got to go Anthony Richardson. The value's too good. And in a 14-team super flex league, holy crap. That means in a perfect world, every team's only going to have 2. So if you have 3 legitimate starting quarterbacks, you have to pay a king's ransom to get 102. And Wilson, as much as I love him, is not enough. You've got to go with the 102 there and take Anthony Richardson. But all right, so startup trading pick strategy. There's a few things for me. A lot of it has to do with understanding the values. And I know that that's like, okay, but that's what I struggle with. I don't understand the values of them. What you need to do is you need to look at the players that are going to be on the clock or on the board at a certain pick. So a lot of times, like even if you just want to use Sleeper's ADP on the app, if you're drafting on the app, you can scroll down and it'll tell you where your pick 46 will be, or, things like that. You have to look at where that's going to be. Look at the players in that range. Look at who's going to be available. Roughly. You don't know exactly. Guys could get drafted earlier or later, but you go in there and look at the players that are going to be there. Then look at the draft picks and look at roughly the players that you like and where they're going in these rookie drafts. And that's what I do. I like to always associate picks and players, or picks with players, because then that helps me determine, okay, in this range, yeah, I'm willing to give up my 2024 fourth, because right here, even though it's an 11th round pick, I'd much rather have Deontay Johnson. And I don't know if that's the exact range, but you get my point. You can go in there and then you can put actual names to actual players. So I love moving up and down the board in super flex leagues or in startups, but it does take a lot more work. All right. Let's see. Dan asks, what are your thoughts on Pickett in Dynasty? The guy offered me him in a package for Mahomes. It's hard to choose between rebuilding with Mahomes and selling for a king's ransom while rebuilding. So I'm totally fine selling for a king's ransom, but I need a sure thing at quarterback, and I don't think Pickett's a sure thing. I think that there's a chance that he could be the guy, but I think there's also a chance that if this team flounders and doesn't produce like they're supposed to this year, that they could easily move on. I get that he was a first-round pick, but it wasn't like he was a top 5 or top 10. And we've seen teams even use less than 2 years with top 5 and top 10 picks and move on from players. So I think this year he's really got to prove it. And I still don't know that he's ever going to be a legitimate quarterback one. I just don't think that that's realistic. Maybe he'll have a year or so where he sneaks in there at quarterback 11, but I need a guy I feel better about than that. So if you want to throw in like, and it's players that you like, but if you want to throw in there, Anthony Richardson is a great example. You want to throw in one of these rookie quarterbacks? I feel a little bit better about this class than I do Kenny Pickett. You want to throw in like those are the types of upside guys that I need. Could they still miss? Sure. But I want one that I feel like has a much better chance of hitting their ceiling than I think Kenny Pickett does. So I probably would want something else in that deal other than Kenny Pickett. All right. Kai says, if your league has talked about going Superflex, but you don't have a timetable and it hasn't officially been voted on, would you consider hoarding quarterbacks now so you are set when it is approved? Look, I'm always up for playing chess instead of checkers. I always think that that's a good move. So if you are able to sneak an extra quarterback or two in order to do that, I think it's worth it. The risk you run is if you go too heavy with trying to acquire these quarterbacks, then it's just going to get voted down because nobody's officially voted for it. And they're going to say, well, this dude has too many quarterbacks. I'm not going to be able to compete with that. I'm never voting for Superflex because I can't compete with him. So you got to be sneaky about it. You can hoard to a certain extent, but if you go too far and you monopolize the market, then people just will never vote for it. So get a guy or two more than you might have normally, especially some of the young upside guys. But I don't know that I would go crazy rostering 6, 7 quarterbacks on my roster. I think 4, maybe 5. But much more than that, it's going to be too much of a tell and people won't vote for it anymore. So I would hoard, maybe isn't the right word, just accumulate a few more. So Sedated Fork is saying that 101 will be Bijan. So yeah, that is a big piece of information. I assumed it would be Bijan, but you never really know in a 14-team Superflex league. I did that one time. I did do a 14-team Superflex league, and actually I'm in another one right now, and it is tough. I did a good job of acquiring quarterbacks in the draft, and then I sold a little too much. And so I don't have the quarterback depth that I did before. And I wish I would have sold for a little bit more and held out a little longer on a lot of those guys. But here we are. So, all right. I think I'm caught up on all the trade questions. If anybody else has a trade question, startup draft question, whatever, feel free to get it in because we will be going here to break in just a moment. But Tyler says, how much of a premium should I be willing to pay to get a second elite quarterback in a 10-team 2-quarterback league to completely lock down my league? So 10-teamers are a little bit different because the scarcity at quarterback isn't there as much. So basically every team is going to have 3 quarterbacks. So you're pretty safe, pretty set at quarterbacks. But what you're asking is about the premium quarterbacks, I'm guessing, to get one of those elite guys. So that way you do have a leg up on the rest of your competition. Now, I am willing to overpay to get quarterbacks in Superflex leagues, especially if this is a league with friends that you are very confident is going to be around for a long time. If you're sitting there with Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, you can feel pretty confident for the next decade to 15 years that you're going to have your quarterbacks set, good to go, and all you have to do is worry about the other positions. So if I have to pay a couple extra seconds, or heaven forbid an extra first that I didn't really plan on paying, I might be willing to do it. Oh, and especially if you're shifting to a 12-team league soon, then absolutely. I would be looking to try to get that second guy because once it shifts to 12 teams, then the value on that position is really going to go up. It's going to be much more difficult to acquire. So I would get in now, because even this is a classic Rich line. An overpay today is going to look like an underpay tomorrow, because what you're having to pay for a quarterback in a 10-team league is nothing compared to what it's going to be in a 12-team league. So he has Hurts currently, looking to add T-Law. Yeah, very similar situation to what I was just talking about with Herbert and Burrow. I would absolutely be willing to pay a little bit more than I would have normally to add T-Law, knowing that he's going to be the guy for me long term. All right, real quick, before we go to break and we get our very own Dennis Bennett back on the show, let's talk about the Better Insights. That's right, Better fans, you can have the Better Sports Network newsletter emailed to you every day. Look, how many places is a newsletter emailed to you every day? Maybe a week, maybe a month, but every day? That does not happen very frequently. But at Better Sports Network, that's what you're getting. The only place to get our daily Better Bet, plus exclusive offers, program alerts, and special events, and our top moments. Register for free right now at bettersports.com. All right, let's take a quick break. When we get back, sorting through the ADP with Dennis Bennett.
Let me talk to you, Vlad, about an award here that I thought was very, very debatable. And it was Cy Young in the National League. In terms of odds, it's Strider at plus 230, Zach Gallen at plus 215, Clayton Kershaw plus 1,000. Clayton Kershaw, to me, his numbers are phenomenal and better, or at least right there with these other two. Strider was my preseason pick to win the award. But Clayton Kershaw at plus 1,000 compared to these other guys with similar numbers in the plus 200s. Like, let's bang on Kershaw and hope he doesn't get hurt, right? Where are you at with that, Vlad?
Yeah, those are great odds. I think the only concern that fantasy players and Dodgers fans had before the season started was innings limitations. Just wanting to make sure that he is fully ramped up for the playoffs. And as some teams do, you sometimes get those phantom IL stints. And we might see that sometime maybe around the All-Star break with Kershaw, just to preserve his arm over the second half of the season. But man, he's a great pick. If you're telling me those are the odds, that's really, really nice. I do love your Spencer Strider pick. I think that's what I would have done in the preseason and bet on him. He's an absolute beast. So, but Clayton Kershaw at plus 1,000, those are phenomenal odds. And you mentioned Zach Gallen. He's incredible too. And looks like Arizona has been in the hunt there in the playoff. Well, so far it's early. Dodgers, maybe Padres will be in competition for that division. But yeah, that's a nice three-way race, and we might see some other players pop in there.
All right, we are back. Better Sports Network, Dynasty Nerds, the perfect combination. That commercial break, that one got me almost. I almost was not ready. I think that one was a little quicker. I got spooked. So let me get my drink real quick. Oh, gotta cleanse the throat, cleanse the palate here a little bit. Momentarily, we will be adding our very own Dennis Bennett to the stream. We're going to be talking about the ADP that we're going to be looking through here. Oh, and Tyler said we do have a couple shorter breaks now. See, I didn't know. I need to be more prepared or stop assuming I have so much time in between. Good thing it wasn't one of the ones I used the bathroom. That could have been kind of awkward. But it was just a beverage this time, so we're good. It is a seltzer. This is an AHA here. Polar seems to be my favorite seltzer personally. But I'm I'm a fan of these, honestly. I've given up pop, so these kind of help with that for me. But yeah. Heavy T said he thought it was a cactus cooler. Nope, just an aha here for me. That's the noise you make when you say aha. Basically that. Dennis Bennett, how's it going, buddy?
Dude, it's going great.
Man, first of all, sorry about last week. I know things didn't quite pan out, but good news is it's a perfect excuse to get a new computer.
You know, I've been pushing that computer to its limits. Now, here's the issue we may have tonight. So I'm using my son's computer, which is way younger. The computer, the son too.
Sure.
But
I hope so.
his computer doesn't have an Ethernet plug.
Oh.
So I'm on Wi-Fi, and I know Matt says, "Oh, don't use the Wi-Fi." Well, I don't have a choice tonight. Hopefully, I get a new computer this Saturday. That's my goal. But yeah, that one, it just, I've gotten my money's worth out of it. Let's say that.
There you go. Yeah, I actually just recently got a new computer. It's been probably not even quite a month now. And man, I don't think I realized, I mean, I knew my computer sucked, but I don't think I realized how bad it sucked until I got the new one. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much free time now because I'm just getting things done so much faster.
Right. I'm not just sitting around waiting for stuff to load, log in.
It was silly. Like, it was silly how long I would wait for stuff. And my wife would like get on my computer to print something. She's like, is your computer broken? I was like, no. She's like,
no, it's not broken.
Why is it taking me
broken
8 minutes to print something? And I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty normal. She's like, that shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't take 8 minutes to print something. So I don't know.
Stop printing in black and white with lots of little words, baby.
Right? There we go. All right. So Dennis, tonight we're going to be talking a little bit of ADP. Now, do you have the ADP sheet in front of you as well?
I do.
All right. I just want to make sure, because I thought about that later and I was like, we're talking ADP. I really hope he actually has the sheet because I never sent it to him.
I went and grabbed it. I'm on the May 14th tab. And when I was talking with Peter, I was like, look, I think we need to, the May 2nd ADP should go back 6 or 8, drafts, 6 or 8 weeks. We should make sure that we're not just like, oh, the beginning of the month, it's, 1 or 2 drafts versus the end of the month. So I'm pretty sure Peters went to the rolling, month or 6 weeks of drafts.
Now, that's interesting because the one I have right here, I only have the one tab. You got a second tab?
Oh, dude, I've got what I've got. It says May 14th. Then it's got May, March and April, January and February.
All right. I might need you to slack me over that one because mine is lame. Mine's only the May 6th. I don't have the newest, the fresh hot model here. I only have the May 6th model. Now, I'm guessing the ADP isn't drastically different from May 6th to May 14th. We haven't had like any huge breaking news. We haven't had anything like that. So I'm guessing it's not that much different, but it's probably at least a little bit different. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind slacking me that over.
So I had to email it because I'm, like I said, I'm on my kid's computer and like, I've spent the last 90 minutes trying to either look up or reset passwords to get into the stuff I need on the new computer.
No problem at all. No problem at all. All right. I see it. All right. Look at this. This is so much more fancy than mine. Holy moly. All right. Well, maybe a couple of the values that I originally assumed maybe are a little bit different now. But let's get in here. Now, this is Superflex. I don't think it's tight end premium, though. I think this is just Superflex drafts.
Yeah, I think it's just Superflex.
All right. So let's focus on the first round right now. Okay. So the first 12 picks of the Superflex ADP right now, we have 8 quarterbacks in those top 12 picks. Right now, we have Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow as the first 5 guys. And then Justin Herbert as the first 5 guys. Then we have Justin Jefferson. Then another quarterback, Lamar Jackson. Then Jamar Chase at 8. At 9, we have Trevor Lawrence. 10, Justin Fields. 11, Bijan Robinson. And the 12th pick is CeeDee Lamb. Now, is there anything in there, Dennis, in the first 12 picks that you're like, that's a little odd to me?
Not really. I want to believe in Justin Fields. And so Anthony Richardson is 12, CeeDee Lamb is 11. And
it looks that way. They have 2 5s on there. It's kind of mean of them.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah.
All right. So CeeDee Lamb is actually 12.
Yeah.
All right. I get Bijan being the first running back. He's the hotness. He's by some measures, the best running back prospect since LT. And he went to a team that's likely to use him a lot. Whether that's going to be good for his career or not, we're going to see. But out of the gate, looks like he's going to run and pass a lot, catch passes. Fields, I want to believe in. I'm just nervous because there's so much growth that's needed in the passing game. They're getting him DJ Moore and, Chase Claypool to go along with a hopefully healthy Darnell Mooney. They've got a couple backs. It seems almost like it, as weird as it may look in Chicago, we may see the, 5'9", 205-pound Khalil Herbert as the early down back, and the 6 foot, 220-pound Roschon Johnson as the third down back, because Herbert's way more explosive than Johnson, and he showed that a lot last year. So that could be weird. That's as far as the values, I think the values are all fair there. It comes down to, in the first round, it's personal preference. Are there guys, maybe, would you rather have A.J. Brown or Garrett Wilson over CeeDee Lamb? I have Wilson as my wide receiver 3. So, yes, I would have Wilson up over CeeDee Lamb. But there's 4 or 5 picks amongst them. It's going to be flavor of who's your favorite. At this point, you're looking at a lot of great players. So, it's a dynasty startup, so you're not going to see a lot of running backs there, especially in Superflex. Burrow and Mahomes are really the only 2 guys in the top 12 quarterbacks that don't run a lot.
Right.
So can Burrow, and Burrow did his first year till he got injured. So will that hold up, or are they going to get surpassed by these guys that do run the ball a lot more and combine that with passing like Josh Allen, like Justin Herbert, like Trevor Lawrence, who have the ability to pass really high level at a really high level and run for 400 or 500 yards.
Yeah. So let's get to the guy that was right on the cusp of making the first round, and that's Anthony Richardson. He is quarterback 9, but he's the 13th guy. You're basically spending a first round pick on him. Now, I know it's at the turn, and you could go either way between him and CeeDee Lamb, but his price for a rookie quarterback is as high as we've seen it since Trevor Lawrence, probably. And he's one of the highest that we've seen, period, over the past decade. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about Anthony Richardson as basically a first round pick?
It's very much like Justin Fields. He has that really, really high rushing floor. He's big. He's bigger than Fields, who's 6'3", 230. So Richardson, 6'4", 244, 6'5", 244. And Richardson isn't quite as fast, but by most accounts, Richardson isn't as an accomplished passer as Fields was coming in. And so there's a lot of work to do there. That being said, we saw Fields last season, his first 3 games threw a combined, 32 passes or something like that.
Something ridiculous.
And still put up monster numbers. He was QB8 last year. So the ability for Richardson to put up QB1 numbers is there. It'll come down to how Shane Steichen uses him there. I think they're going to put him in a position to succeed. Irsay's basically come out and said, look, we brought this guy in to be our quarterback. And I got to be honest, if I'm looking at Gardner Minshew or Anthony Richardson, I'm doing everything I can to get Anthony Richardson on the field. And to boot, they've got a great running game, and they beefed up their O-line a little bit. 3-4 years ago, they had one of the best offensive lines in the league. The last couple of years, it kind of took a dive. Now they're putting some more emphasis on it. You've got two really good downfield wide receivers in Pittman and Pierce, and that plays to the game that Richardson does. Richardson can extend plays, get the ball downfield. He's got a big arm. So it could be a fairly low efficiency first year for Richardson, but with high rush yardage and, high ADOT targets.
Would you take him there?
I was just looking. I was in one of Peter's mock drafts here last week, and I took Richardson at like the 109.
Oh, wow. So you're saying like this is a value for you?
Yeah, I think it's fair value. I looked at it and thought to myself, how do I want to build this team? And I'm like, well, I want to go. The other elite quarterbacks were gone. And so my thought was, if I'm going to get an elite, so it went Mahomes, Hurts, Allen, Jefferson, Burrow, Fields, Jackson, Herbert, Lawrence. And so at 110, I decided I was going to go and take Anthony Richardson, who in my eyes was the last of the really high upside quarterbacks available. We know Watson has put up some high-end years in his past. Tua can do it if he can stay healthy. Maybe Dak. I thought I'm going to make this, and I'm going to maybe look for a safer two quarterbacks later in the draft. Now, I got sniped significantly and ended up not taking Carr until the 6th round. I was hoping for Russell Wilson. He got picked the pick before me, and I thought, let me see if Goff comes back around to me in the 6th. And he literally got picked the pick after me in the 5th round. Daniel Jones got picked. Kirk Cousins. Those were guys I was targeting, and they got sniped from me. So I ended up with probably not. I took 4 quarterbacks. I took Hooker later. I was aiming for Will Levis. He got picked in front of me. And I took another veteran quarterback with not a lot of upside too. But to me, I wanted that high-end quarterback. So if I'm doing a startup now, I'm okay taking Richardson probably anytime after the 108.
Okay.
Because in a super flex league, those other high-end quarterbacks are going to be gone.
I get taking him. I do understand taking Anthony Richardson there. I am so risk averse in my first round or two. I do not like significant risk early on. So a lot of time to avoid that altogether, I just trade out. I just trade out of the first altogether. So I don't even have to deal with the anxiety of it. But I'm also a guy that likes to build my team in rounds 3, 4, and 5. That's where I like to really emphasize, where other guys like to have 2 first-round picks, and then, they might not pick much later on. I like to really build my team in that 3rd through 5th round range. That's where I really like to focus in on. So for me, I'm comfortable closer to where Amon-Ra is going and Breece Hall is going. That end of the 2nd round is where I'm comfortable, which means I'm just going to probably never get him in a startup because I don't think he's going to fall that far to me ever. And like I said, I understand it. And if he hits, that's even a value, because if he hits, he's a top 3, top 5 guy. He is.
So here was the rest of my thought. So I went young at receivers so I could allow him time to mature. If it didn't work this year with him, I had my other quarterback I took was Matt Stafford.
Okay.
So, but I went A.J. Brown in the second, Chris Olave in the third, Drake London in the fourth, Terry McLaurin in the seventh, Amari Cooper in the eighth. So I was taking young to young-ish wide receivers. So they all have 2 to 5 years of peak potential left.
Sure.
Nick Chubb was my first running back I took in the 5th round. So I'm like, well, I know he's going to have a couple years. And if it's not working, if I'm stinking this year, I can trade Chubb to a contender.
Yeah.
That was I was building it, not productive struggle in it, but I was building it young with the intention of saying, I'm going with 2 older quarterbacks. If Richardson isn't it this year, but shows potential, I'm okay to wait a year because I did draft young enough assets.
No, that makes sense. So let's get to the rest of the second round here. Anthony Richardson, A.J. Brown, Deshaun Watson, Garrett Wilson, Dak Prescott, Christian McCaffrey, Jalen Waddle, Kyler Murray, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then Bryce Young is the end of that second round there. The one guy that kind of sticks out to me, and I don't think it's a bad pick. And lots of guys hopping in, talking trades, just saying what's up. Appreciate all of you guys. If we have a little time at the end, maybe Dennis and I will do a couple more trade questions. We might have some time to get to it. We'll see. The one guy that I struggle with is Christian McCaffrey. It's not that I don't understand the pick. I do. He's an elite running back that could win you your league this year. The struggle I have is we're talking about a player that has been significantly injured often. Even last year where it was like his banner health year, he was getting like electroshock therapy on like the sidelines with his knee and stuff just to like continue playing. But we talk all the time about these running backs once they hit that 26, 27 range to get out. But yet people are using top 2 round draft capital to get in, which is, if you were to just trade your second round pick straight up, you're probably getting 24 first, 25 first, and then maybe even something else. So you're getting like significant draft capital back to just give up your second round pick in a startup. So that's the hard part for me is we typically talk about trying to get out from running backs at that spot. And instead we're like buying this running back at this spot. Now, I know that there's a couple other running backs in there, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall. I get those ones more just because of the age. But Dennis, are you okay with taking a Christian McCaffrey in the middle of the second round?
Not in the startup, because I don't know how the rest of my team is going to turn out. I have an idea. I have a plan. But the last thing I want to do is get done with my startup draft and go, hey, Christian McCaffrey's on the block. I'm rebuilding.
Yeah.
Then why did you take him there? You don't have that much control over how the draft goes. You just have to be flexible and adapt to it. So I see completely. To me, McCaffrey is a guy that if I need a running back to put me over the top on an established team, then I go get him. Let him die on my bench after this year, as long as I win the title. But spending pick 16 on him, especially with Taylor and Breece Hall sitting on the board there, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd be able to do it. Now, this is a perfect time where, when somebody approaches you because they want him and you can move back. To me, I've got guys like Dak kind of falling a little bit. It's clear the ankle injury from a couple years ago. He used to be good for 300 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground. You're not going to get that from him anymore. So to me, I think he's moving towards that third round quarterback because he tends to, he makes a bonehead play in big situations. He's a good quarterback, I think, a really good quarterback, but I don't think he's not going to reach that elite status anymore. So to me, I would have him down. I would probably go Bryce Young and CJ Stroud over him right now.
Okay.
Even though he has, and part of that is because I'm looking at him going, he's what, 28 now, 29? It's been around a little bit. It's got that injury, coming off that injury that has taken away his mobility. And so for me, I'm going to go with the younger. I'm a Kyler hater, so I would take Bryce Young and CJ Stroud over Kyler Murray too.
Sure.
No,
No, that makes sense.
4,000-yard seasons Kyler Murray has?
What's that?
You know how many 4,000-yard seasons Kyler Murray has?
I'm guessing not many.
The same number as Bryce Young and CJ Stroud combined.
Yeah, but he's been a pretty darn good fantasy producer with those little itty bitty legs there. So that has helped him out a little bit. Moving into the third round, we'll only go through the top 3 rounds, and then we'll just kind of cherry pick after that if you're cool with that, Dennis.
I am.
After the third round, we had Bryce Young and CJ Stroud back to back, but one of them ended up being a second round ADP. One of them ended up being third round ADP. But then we get Kyle Pitts, Jahmyr Gibbs, T. Higgins, Travis Kelce, Chris Olave, Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, Saquon Barkley, Mark Andrews, Travis Etienne, and Jackson Smith in Jigba. So lots of names there, lots of different age ranges in there, lots of different positions in there. This is the first round where we have quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, and wide receivers, everyone represented in here. So general thoughts here on what you like, what you don't like, Dennis.
So I struggle with Kyle Pitts, man, because do I still believe, he's got all of that talent, and then you're like, well, but he's got a new quarterback. Arthur Smith is going to get him. Drake London. Now he's got Bijan Robinson. Oh no, they're going to use Bijan like they did Derrick Henry. Well, you didn't get a lot of passing stuff out of the tight end consistently when Derrick Henry was rushing the ball 30 times a game. So now I'm a little nervous about Kyle Pitts. Now, I still believe in the talent, and you have to buy into that. The question is, how many years do we think Kelce has left? If he's playing with Mahomes, he could theoretically play 5 more years at a pretty high level. And if you're drafting in a dynasty startup and you think, well, I get 3 more years of Kelce playing like that, would I rather take Pitts because in 5 years, Pitts might be producing like Kelce when I can get Kelce right now? So even in a startup, I struggle with taking Pitts over Kelce. I'm not going to tell somebody they're wrong. I just don't know if I could do it. And I don't know if I could take Mark Andrews over Pitts either. But that's just because I have an irrational love for Mark Andrews.
So it's funny because we're on the opposite end of this. To me, I have no issue with the Pitts one. It's the Kelce one that I have the issue with. And it comes back to a similar thing with Christian McCaffrey. At this point, am I really going to hitch my wagon to a guy that could retire at any point? Now, could he play 3 more years with Patrick Mahomes? It sure is a possibility. Could he literally tomorrow just say, guys, it's been awesome. I've loved my time. I'm ready to hang it up and play golf. Like that could absolutely be in the realm of possibility, which scares the tar out of me to use that high of a pick on a player that could just be done at any time. So that's the one that scares me more so than Pitts. I get the question about how
Scared
high
money don't make money.
What's that?
Scared money don't make money.
I guess, but I don't know, man. I'll play it fast and loose once we get into the next couple rounds. But these first 2-3 rounds, man, that just hurts so bad. So I would rather be bold in a young tight end that I think could be like that guy in Kyle Pitts, as opposed to Kelce, who is awesome, but could literally be dead for me fantasy football wise any day.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for taking that approach. I think it's a very reasonable approach to take. I get it. I drafted Kyle Pitts really high in the startup 2 years ago. Yeah. And so I think I took Lawrence at the 103 and Pitts at either the 303 or the 210. like these guys are young. It's a startup. That's where I'm going. Lawrence pick is paid off. The Pitts, not so much.
Sure. Nope, I get you. Sedated Fork mentioned it. As much as I love Jackson Smith and Jigba, are we sure he should already be a third rounder?
We are not.
Okay.
He should not be a third rounder yet. I mean, as much as, we didn't expect, he's first round draft capital. Amon-Ra St. Brown is what he is. And I get that. And you've got to calculate that draft capital into the equation. But Tyler Lockett isn't going anywhere this year, probably next year based on his contract, unless he retires. Now, teams eat dead money all the time and significant amounts of it. But DK Metcalf is the number one there. Mike Clay, I think, has Jackson Smith and Jigba with, I think, 56 receptions this year. And as the wide receiver 3 in Seattle, I'm not sold on Geno playing at the level he did the first half of last season. I think it's going to be more of the second half, especially adding Charbonnet to a Kenneth Walker, the third backfield. I think we're going to see Pete Carroll turtle up and hammer the ball, and that's going to affect all those wide receivers. And DK is going to be the only one that really has a big year for fantasy. Mm-hmm. That being said, I love Jackson Smith and Jigba's talent, but I wouldn't be drafting him over DK.
Yeah, it does seem a little rich for my blood, taking him that high. And I like him. He was my wide receiver 1 in the class. I've mentioned before, if he had just a hair more speed, we would have been talking him in the as prospect wise, like CeeDee Lamb and Chase and Devontae Smith. Like we would have been ranking him in that range if he just, because he has everything else. He literally has everything else.
I get people want to bring up the speed, but if he ran a 4.49 instead of a 4.54, like how much more open is he really going to get?
Sure.
He's so open, man. He gets open like Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. It's true. It is absolutely true. All right. So another player in that range, third round is like a really interesting range because there's some players in there I'm like, oh, I love that value. And then there's other players I'm like, you get away from me at that value. But the other one that I struggle with is Travis Etienne. He had 4 good games last year. He had 4 running back 1 games last year, which you expect out of a player that you're going to be taking fairly high. And the rest of his games, he wasn't even a running back 2. It was running back 4 and 5 and just some putrid games. And they just drafted Tank Bigsby in the 3rd round. I know people kind of want to pretend that isn't real, but it's also a Doug Peterson team who tends to have a running back by committee, whether you like it or not. So I can understand it because of the age of Travis Etienne, but there's a lot of good-looking receivers right behind him that I would really like to get my hands on more so than Travis Etienne.
Yeah, I agree. To me, Tank Bigsby is like the John Wayne of running backs. He's just going to come in there. He isn't going to talk a whole lot. He's just going to knock some people around. He's going to save the little old lady. He's going to push his way into the end zone. He's going to get the first down. He's going to go over to the sideline, drink his Gatorade, and just kind of carry on doing business. He's a guy that just does work.
Yeah.
And I think that if ETN doesn't produce, we're going to see Peterson go, well, I'm going to give ETN a couple more carries. I'm going to give him another series. Let's see what he can do. He caught the ball okay in college. They just didn't use him much in that vein. We've got these wide receivers in this tight end. Do we really need to throw the ball to ETN? Let's put this more hard nose back, because ETN's, I think they're roughly the same size. But Bigsby is clearly the guy that, if you got to walk through a dark alley, you want to walk in there with Tank Bigsby over Travis Etienne, I think.
100%. Just the fact that his name is Tank automatically moves him up the echelon of power backs. So All right, so let's move on from the top 3 rounds. We've discussed them at length so far, but there's a lot of other interesting nuggets beyond the first 3 rounds, and that's where you can really start to find some value. So, Dennis, who are a couple guys in the ADP that you saw that you were like, they are interesting to me?
Probably the biggest one to me is really, really deep. Let me scroll down here and see if I can find where he's at. You know, it's easy to say Miles Sanders. Everybody loves Miles Sanders. He landed in a good spot. I'm going deeper than that. James Conner at pick 121, running back 38. He's just got to hold off, no, Eno Benjamin's even gone. Who they got? Jonathan Ward. I get that the offense starting out is not going to be super explosive because you're either looking at Colt McCoy for the first few games, maybe sprinkle in some Caton Tune until Murray gets back. So to me, that feels like they're gonna ride James Conner. And I know there's concerns about him holding up, and he's 28, 29, 30 years old now. He's been around a little bit. But he was in one of those situations where they didn't add any competition. And if you're drafting him at the end of the 10th round, beginning of the 11th round, and you've got him as your RB3 or 4, that feels kind of like a cheat code because he's a volume back. And everybody, you see analysts a lot of time want to poo-poo players because, he's just a volume back. Well, no shit. That's what wins is getting, you don't get points if you don't get touches. Give that man all the volume. I heard you earlier talking about Najee Harris.
Mm-hmm.
I agree 100%. I know there's some concern that Jaylen Warren's going to cut into his touches, but Najee he's a volume back. We just had an article up on the Dynasty Nerd site last week. We've got to stop saying that like it's a bad thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing in fantasy football. It is a great thing. The only other guy in the backfield there is Keontae Ingram. You mentioned with James Conner, running back out of USC.
That's who I couldn't remember.
Yep. But still, I mean, he looked fine in flashes, but I don't think he's any real threat to James Conner having a significant workload once again this season. So digging through the ADP, obviously it's changed a little bit since the May 6th one. So there were a couple guys I was like, oh, that guy was good value, but he's changed. He's not as good a value anymore. But I still think that Aaron Rodgers is one of the best values in Superflex leagues. I get it. He's old. I get it. He's similar to Travis Kelce. He could retire at any point, and it wouldn't surprise me. But the difference is you have to take Travis Kelce in the 3rd round, and you're taking Aaron Rodgers at pick, 106? Like, that's 9th, 10th round?
QB 26. And he has legitimate QB1 upside.
Exactly. And what do you have to pay to get it? Even if you're not drafting him, okay, trade your 2nd round pick for him, and now you have a guy that could lead you all the way the next 2 years. And that might be all you get. You might just get 2 years, and that's fine with me. At a 9th round value, I am still baffled that he falls that far. I would be comfortable taking him easily 2 rounds ahead of what his ADP is right now, just to make sure that I had that solid quarterback too. I know it's not as fun as taking Jordan Love, who you could have 10 years with, or Will Levis, who could be the starting quarterback, but he also could not be the starting quarterback. We know Aaron Rodgers is the starter. We know he's really good. So he's one of those guys that I just love his value every time I see it.
So a guy that I keep warming up to, and this is, if Peter's listening, and this will warm his heart, is Jahan Dotson.
Yeah.
Of the Commanders. What are your thoughts on Sam Howell? Is he going to be good enough to allow Jahan Dotson to be relevant alongside Terry McLaurin?
I absolutely think he could be relevant alongside Terry McLaurin. Like, The biggest thing holding him back is just, is Sam Howell really that guy, or will Brissett be in there and be that guy? But I think that there's enough there, and I think they're both dynamic enough playmakers and do things a little bit differently. Terry McLaurin's going to beat you more so down the field with his speed, with his route running. Dotson has great route running too, but he can be a little more physical. He can go up and get the ball, make the spectacular catches. So I think both guys can absolutely be relevant. And
so did you see their ADPs there?
Yeah, they're what, at like 80s?
So McLaurin is 77 and Dotson is 79.
Yeah.
They're like wide receiver 32 and wide receiver 33 in ADP
easily.
right now. So which one's the value? Which one's the value? Is it McLaurin?
They're both the value.
Or is it Dotson?
I'll take them both on the same team. I don't even care. I'll take them both. I like them both. Another guy that's a value, and I'm sure Rich is going to talk about him because he has been all over this guy. But even a few spots later at wide receiver 38, Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson's going close to pick 100 right now. His ADP is 97.67. And that's exactly it. That's exactly it. He did not score a touchdown last year. Now, that hasn't been a problem for him before last year. And we see it time and time again. Even though I'm not a big Kenny Pickett guy, every time you have the same quarterback, the same offensive coordinator, and the same head coach for a second season, almost 100%, not quite. There are exceptions, but almost 100% of the time, you're going to see better performance out of that offense the following year. We see it all the time. Jalen Hurts this year, guess what? That was his second year in this offense with the same OC and the same head coach. It happened with Josh Allen. It happens all the time. It's another reason I'm in on Justin Fields this year. It's the second year with the same head coach, the same offensive coordinator, and the same quarterback. Once you get that continuity going and you get a full off season of all of these guys together, things are almost always better. So I think that there will be much better chemistry between Pickett and Johnson. And I'm not as high on George Pickens as everyone else is. So I still believe that Deontay Johnson truly is the number one receiver there. But
well, you saw they just signed Hakeem Butler.
Oh, dang it. They're all dead. Hakeem Butler will win the day.
All right. So you mentioned the quarterback, head coach, OC, second year. Jalen Hurts had it. Now he's got a new offensive coordinator this year. He's going off the board at QB3. Should we be moving him down a little bit?
It helps once a guy's kind of established. But to be honest, I typically do take Herbert and Burrow ahead of him. He's normally my quarterback 5. So will I still take him super early? Yeah, I'll absolutely still take him super early, but I would slightly rather Herbert and Burrow ahead of Jalen Hurts. Not that I blame anybody for taking Hurts, but I would just slightly rather those two ahead of Hurts. What about you?
It depends on my mood. It's literally close enough that if I'm drafting 10 teams, I'm probably going to end up with, I don't know, maybe 4 Burrow, 4 Hurts, and 2 Herbert.
Okay.
Maybe it's a 3-3-4. It could go any way because I do think they're that close. The Chargers wide receivers, they have a great wide receiver core, albeit an old one, and they just added the TCU wide receiver core to it. Mm-hmm. Burrow's got great young quarterbacks, wide receivers, and so does Hurts. Hurts is not quite the thrower Burrow is, but Burrow isn't the runner Hurts is. So, they're all right there. To me, it's kind of and it's probably terrible analysis, but they're literally that close to just say, well, this time I'm taking this one.
Yeah, no, I can't blame you. I can't blame you one bit. I think they're all that close together, all clumped together. It's, and one thing we don't talk about enough, because a lot of times, we are analysts, We are talking from a perspective that we're wanting to help people win championships. But part of fantasy football is enjoying your experience, rooting for guys that you enjoy watching, that you like. Like, there is a fan element to it. It's not just a purely gambling element. There's a fan element. There's a roster construction element. There's all of these things that make that just a little bit more fun. So if you're an Eagles fan or you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan, draft Jalen Hurts. Like, root for a guy you want to root for. If you really think just Joe Burrow is the best looking man you've ever seen, well, draft Joe Burrow. Like, go with guys that you enjoy watching, teams you enjoy, like, especially when it's that close. I do think that there's a fan element that sometimes we just slightly miss out on.
Well, and I think that goes directly to what you talked about earlier. Well, how do you draft when people, you're an analyst and people know what you think? Well, you think, all right, all three of these guys are good. And you do that at every pick. Yes, maybe you've got one guy you like and you're targeting, but you're going to pivot. We have pivots. I don't worry. I had somebody once say, oh, do you put out fake rankings so that the people, I'm like, no. Like, I barely have time to do real rankings, let alone fake rankings. Look, if you want to draft, I got one guy I'm in several leagues with, always sniping me in rookie drafts. I'm like, it is what it is. If I want somebody bad enough, I go get them.
Yeah.
Take the shot, take the chance.
Absolutely. Well, Dennis, I appreciate you coming on, breaking down the ADP with me, discussing all of these players. Remind everyone where they can find you and anything that you would like to give a little plug to.
Well, Trade Talk Tuesday nights, Dynasty Nerds Discord, 9 p.m. Me and Peter. Mondays and Fridays, Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. Thursday nights here, I'm at Culture_Coach on Twitter.
Perfect. Well, thank you. And we will see you back here next week, my man.
Yeah, it seems like I made it.
You made it. And maybe with a brand new computer. You might be back with a brand new computer looking even sexier than normal.
Then we get that Brad Pitt filter.
All of a sudden, you're like, Dennis, when did you get a 6-pack, man? Wow, that's impressive.
I've been sporting a 1-pack for quite some time.
All right. Well, I am Garret Price. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Price, talking all things Dynasty, draft, rookie drafts, ADP, all kinds of stuff. Hit me up on there. You can find me here every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. You can find me on the Dynasty Nerds podcast. That's right. Just search Dynasty in your podcast app. It'll probably be the first one that pops up. Appreciate everyone. Dennis, Tristan, Heavy T behind the screen. Appreciate all you guys. See you next week.